Morning. Sorry if you could hear a quiet beeping in the background. I took the phone off and I didn't take it off early enough. It does that beeping for a little while before it finally stops. But I'd like to welcome you all today, especially if you're here watching for the first time. It's going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be speaking about um, my own experiences a little bit more and dog training. I am a dog trainer, and that's my two sort of passions in life is to serve God and to teach people and to help people to be good dog owners, and hopefully that they sometimes relate together. But let's just have a really short prayer before we begin. I haven't been praying before lately, but I'm going to make a start again. Father, I just pray that you would help us to understand what being a good dog owner is and what being a pack member is, and that we are part of your pack. We are not just a sheep, but we can be like a dog too. Help us to understand and to stay with this video until the end and learn from you, learning from our master. Amen. Well, we don't see many sheep in Swindon, do we? We might see lots of dog owners out walking their dogs, but not shepherds leading their sheep. I think if Jesus had been in Swindon in person, walking the streets of Swindon, well, this is where I live, he would have been telling stories about the good dog owner or the good dog trainer, not just the good shepherd, because he would see these dogs, and I'm sure he would see a lot of his own human family sort of in them. But let's just go and read first. I'm not going to read very much today, and I'm hoping to be a little bit briefer. But let's make a start. I did say we were going to look at the passage that we looked at last week, which was about the parable of the shepherd, but I'm going to suggest that you look back at the video and that you read it in your own time, and I'm just going to select a few verses from it. It is in John's Gospel, chapter 10. We're going to just read a few verses. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him. This is the shepherd. The sheep hear his voice as he calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. When he has brought them out, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will not follow someone else. Instead, they will run away from such a person because they do not know him. Jesus told them this parable, but they did not understand what he meant. I'm going to go a little bit further to verse 14. I am the good shepherd. As the Father knows me, and I know the Father in the same way, I know my sheep, and they know me, and I am willing to die for them. Just want us to get this idea that Jesus saying, I'm the good shepherd. And as a dog trainer, I'm kind of like thinking that Jesus might be saying, I am the good dog trainer. I'm the good dog owner. My dogs know my voice. They follow me. They won't follow anyone else. I'm going to read a second reading, the story which I said it was on today, but it's going to be a little bit about both, really. It's a parable in Luke's Gospel, chapter 15, the lost sheep. One day, many tax collectors and other Pharisees came to listen to Jesus. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law started grumbling. This man welcomes outcasts and even eats with them. So Jesus told them this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. What does he do? He leaves the other 99 sheep in the pasture and goes looking for the one that just got lost until he finds it. When he finds it, he is so happy that he puts it on his shoulders and carries it back home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says to them, I am so happy. I have found the lost sheep. Let us celebrate. In the same way, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 respectable people who do not need to repent. Basically, that's the message that Jesus is giving in the lost sheep. It's really about the joy in finding the lost sheep and the rejoicing over that which has got lost and gone astray and has returned. A little bit like the prodigal son. But I'm going to go on to thinking about Jesus's pack. I did say that we were going to be talking about analogies about dogs, and you've got to use your imagination. You've got to try and imagine things which I'm going to be describing, because I'm basing the talk which follows on a presentation that I did at a church service called Pause and Praise. It was called Following the Master, and we had dogs from our dog club who acted out the parts of the story, and it was not sheep, but we were saying about Jesus being the good dog trainer, and there were some really interesting exercises that really helped us to understand what it really meant to be listening to our master's voice, following him. Well, Jesus is the perfect dog rescuer. You've heard of the dog whisperer. Well, Jesus is both a dog whisperer and a dog rescuer, but humans rather than canine. He rescues the stray dogs, the street dogs, the puppy farm dogs, the waifs and strays, the ones that no one wants, and adopts them into his family. When he has brought the new dog into his family, it becomes part of the family. It's under new ownership, and everything is new. It will have probably a new name. It will have a microchip, I think I do have to have microchips now, which is a kind of sign. It's sealed, saying, "This is my owner. This is who I belong to." And we are sealed with the Holy Spirit, not a microchip, but the Holy Spirit within us, and so that we are known as God's people, His family. And the dog that comes into the family, into the home, comes into something which is completely new, no matter whatever its past has been, unless, of course, we're thinking of a dog owner who's bred the dog, but we're not thinking in these terms for this analogy. Thinking more about the new dog. When I got my dog, Charlie, he was called Chunkalunk. He was a chubby dog, and that's why they called him Chunkalunk. But I changed his name to Charlie. Jesus gives us a new name. Loved, accepted, forgiven. Maybe we'd been thinking of ourselves as worthless, rejected, forsaken. But God's in the business of rescuing and accepting us and giving us a new name. But although the dog comes into the family and everything is new for it, and he's got an expert owner, he still needs training and teaching. He comes with sets of problems, even a puppy. A puppy obviously is going to be easier for the dog owner to train in the way that he wants, because he hasn't had so many bad experiences in the past, and he probably can't remember his past too much. And maybe in a way it's like that with children and young people that come to Jesus young. Maybe this is you that don't even remember a previous life, but you would have been adopted into this family maybe at a young age, and still come with a few toddler problems. And if you didn't, there's always adolescence, and dogs can become a bit difficult at adolescent times, and adolescent young Christians can become a little bit headstrong too. No matter what age or who they are, when we are adopted into Jesus's pack, we need to be trained. We need to be taught. We need to be given so much more. But let's just think about what the dog needs. He doesn't need harsh prong collars and pulling and tugging. Jesus isn't an old-fashioned trainer. He's like more of a newer dog trainer who uses positive reinforcements, maybe clickers. He encourages us, praises us. even though he may need to sometimes put us outside the door and ignore us. It's for a purpose. And one of his main training aids is the puppy pen or the crate. Also the lead. Unlike sheep who are led out into the pastures, Jesus puts a lead onto us as the human puppy, so to speak, and leads us out, going before us, going out the door first, not because he wants to dominate, but because there might be dangers there. There might be a cat walking past that the dog would run after, and he wants to keep the dog safe. The pen. Let's think about the puppy pen. The crate, a place of safety, much like a sheep pen. It has boundaries. It keeps him or the puppy safe, not just from the dangers outside, but from himself, that he might be a danger. Just think about the times when you have a young dog, if you are a dog owner, and you put it into a crate at the times at night when you can't watch it, the times when you're out and away from it, the times when you're sleeping. You know that the puppy is just, or the dog is just being a dog, and he may chew things. The new dog, the rescue dog, is certainly likely to want to chew, maybe not even be house trained yet. Jesus teaches us all the kind of things that we need to know, but there are times when we need to be in the safety of a dog crate, much like a sheep needs to be in a pen. And I did have someone saying they would have liked to have known more about the sheep pen. Well, maybe thinking of it as a puppy crate, if you're a dog owner, will help you understand it a little bit more than thinking in terms of a sheep pen. But he needs also to be taken out of the pen, taken out, given experiences. He's taken to dog training classes, at least I hope he's taken to dog training classes as a dog trainer. There he learns to meet other dogs, he learns to relate to them, he learns to socialize. And there might be a few barks, and a bit of might even be an odd scrap, but he's learning, and Jesus is there as a good dog trainer, training him, teaching each dog as an individual, and helping them to relate and get together. He's building them up as one to be together, just as he's building up his church. But we'll move on. We'll be moving on from there. A dog is not meant to always be in a pen. It's not always meant to be on a lead. A dog is meant to be running free on the hills and the fields where it's safe, where there's no sheep, where he can explore and sniff. He needs to be trained to hear his master's voice. He needs a good recall. He needs to be able to come when his master calls him. These are all things which come through time spent with the master, bonding, learning, trusting. And this develops over time. It's time spent with the master. The dog spends with his master, his owner. Well, I'm saying master, but it's more like his mum or his dad. Because, well, if you're a dog owner, I'm sure you talk about your dogs as like, well, people say fur babies. Some people don't like it, and I don't use that term. But I do, or I did, haven't got a dog now, used to say about come to mummy. And my husband, when he was alive, used to say to the dogs, where's daddy? Come to daddy. And we do, because we know that we are, in a sense, have ownership of them. That's just Jesus has ownership of us. Jesus does own us. He paid the adoption fee, so to speak. He paid the price for each puppy, each dog that comes into his back. He paid the price by dying upon the cross. But that's another sermon for another day. But his sheep need to, or his dogs today, need to hear his voice. And they need to be able to be running free and running wild. Now, I'm going to move on to telling you a little bit more about the service that I did for Pause and Praise. This is when I am going to ask you to use your imagination. Just going to have a drink first. we did songs, we did exercises with our dogs, we had PowerPoint presentations. It was basically a service that involved lots of young people and children, so we included them. And one of the verses which we had read was the verse in the Good Shepherd where it says, my sheep hear my voice and they will not follow another, that they follow me. I can't remember the actual words, but we read them a little while ago of the shepherd leading and calling his sheep out. And I wanted to explain a little bit more about what this meant in a visual way that the children could understand. So we chose one of our dogs from our dog club, border collie, and its owner, and she had to get her dog to sit in a sit. Sorry, command the dog to stay, and then walk back from the dog. Then I asked, or rather invited, the children or anyone really to come and to try and call the dog to them. Some of them were calling it with a treat, tempting it, doing all they could to get it from. I'm sorry about this, I'll be a moment. I'm sorry, I'm actually doing it to talk earlier because I'm going to the doctor's because of this cough I can't get rid of, but I'm going to just ask you to be patient. Bear with me. In this exercise, the dog stayed there. But then, all of a sudden, I asked the dog owner to go stand in front of her dog a distance away from him, or her rather, and call her to him. So she called Sherry, and the dog ran straight up to the owner. He ran to her because he knew her voice. He wouldn't follow the others, no matter how pleasant they seemed and whatever they were tempting him with. He followed his master, or rather her master. That's what I believe the illustration was to show. Why, in a way, I believe it's easier to think in terms of a dog pack than a sheep pack, because dogs are a bit more trainable than sheep, I imagine. I know my son has a chicken that his daughter took around on a lead, but really, dogs are a good analogy, and this was a really good illustration, the dog coming to the owner. In our classes, sometimes we used to get the dogs all in a sit, and their owners then to call each dog in turn, and only their dog had to come to them. This is what Jesus wants. He wants us to be that responsive to his voice. He wants us to hear his voice, recognize it, and come when he calls us to come. But we do know from the second story, and I wanted to come on to this, the lost sheep, that just as sheep can stray, dogs can get lost. They're not playing up when they get lost, if they do get lost. They're not being naughty. They're not just being rebellious and not wanting to come back. It's just them, a puppy being a puppy, a dog being a dog, and a sheep being a sheep. It's a nature to stray and to wander. With the sheep, it might be to go after some tasty grass in another field. But with a dog, it could be something more like a squirrel running up a tree, a piece of a piece of burger, or Kentucky Fried Chicken box that's hidden, that's thrown away in a hedge, or it could be bitch in season some way off, and the male dog is tempted. It doesn't matter what they are likely to at some point get lost, although we hope that they won't, which is why we have that microchip within them. But I had both my dogs lost, and one of them was a dog walker that took the dog out, and the dog, she had Bella had 3 dogs, and I don't know if she had all 3 of them, but the leads got tangled, and she tried to let go of the leads to untangle the leads, and Charlie, my youngest dog then, ran off, And she phoned me, came back to me and said, I can't find him. I mean, she was distraught, obviously, but it was nothing like the way that I felt, and it was dreadful. I roamed around that town or where she'd gone. She'd taken him quite a distance away for ages, and eventually I did find him wandering still around, actually, in the part where she had lost him. So he must have been walking round and round and in a small area. But I was so thrilled when I found him. And Teddy, my other dog, he got lost once in Savanac Forest, and I don't know what happened. He was a kind of dog that always dawdled a long way behind me, and I think I turned off a path, and he probably might not have seen me and might have gone straight on. I'm not sure, but it was about 2 hours roaming around Savanac Forest before I finally found him again, quite near to where I'd left him. They didn't mean to get lost. They didn't want to get lost, but they were just enticed by something which seemed so attractive, and they'd wandered away. We know that we're lost, and we can be lost too when we don't know where the shepherd is, when we feel confused, and when we don't quite know where we are. And in life, there's lots of times like that where we might not physically go astray. We might even be going through the motions, but somehow we've left the security of knowing where our master is. I was going to say shepherd, but thinking more in terms of our master as a dog owner. Well, what leads you astray? Might like to think about whether you've ever lost astray, and what it felt like to come back to the safety of the fold and the other sheep, to feel part of a family again. But a sheep doesn't always know that it's lost, and a dog doesn't always know that it's lost. It knows when it's lost, when it becomes hungry, when it's tired, when it wants its bed, when it wants its home, when it misses the owner that he loves. He might take a while to feel like this, but that's when he knows that he's lost. And are we perhaps even listening to this video and feeling that we may be a bit lost? Well, Jesus is there searching to find, and will find you, to find you. But I had another bit. Also, we might not realize that we're lost for quite a while. I had my son when he was a young child, and he was at I think it was Barry Island on a Sunday school outing, and he went missing. He was autistic, and he was only very young then, and he was found several miles away, where he just walked and walked and walked along the beach, and I don't think he could understand why we were worried, and all he said was, I was having a walk. To him, he was just having a walk, and maybe we just feel that we're having a walk, but actually we have drifted away from our master. Well, I hope that this has spoken to you in some way, or maybe you've learned a little bit more about dog training if you're a dog owner, but I hope you've learned more about what being a Christian follower of Jesus is all about. Hearing his voice, letting him pick us up in our arms when I'm lost and rescue us. It may not have been an old sheep. It may not have been a young sheep, a lamb. We've always pictured Jesus carrying a lamb, but sometimes old sheep can get lost too, and same as old dogs. And he was carrying it as a son, just to comfort it. I think it says about putting across his shoulders, but he was keeping it safe, letting it feel close to him. And I'm sure there would have been lots of rejoicing. He wasn't neglecting the other sheep. They were safe in the sheepfold, I'm sure he'd put them in a place of safety, just as I left my other dogs safe at home when I went to look for Charlie. And maybe God's looking for you. Maybe Jesus is wanting you to be part of his pack, or maybe he's just wanting you to stay closer to him. Let him train you. Learn to recognize his voice. Well, I was going to be a lot quicker, but I haven't. I'm really sorry. But I hope that this has been interesting for you, and you've learned, well, that God's spoken to you in some way. So, bye.